Welcome back to math class. Today we're going to work on finding the surface area of cylinders. And let's start by just recalling some of the vocabulary that we've already learned. You can read this for yourself, but if you look over at the circle on the right, the diameter goes from edge to edge right through the circle center. The radius is half that. The circumference is the measurement of the edge around the outside. The area is all the space inside. And we know that pi is that ratio of the diameter divided by the circumference. It is a mathematical constant that can be estimated at 3.14. And last week we did some really cool activities discovering that using string and reading a book and all of those things. So go back to last week if you want to review any of those. And then just also remember these are the formulas for it. So again, pi is that ratio of diameter to circumference, and we can look at that as a formula here. We know that pi is equal to diameter divided by circumference. We know that circumference is pi times diameter, and the area is pi r squared. We learned the circle song where it said circumference is pi times diameter, area is pi r squared. So that's kind of a review of last week. You can also think of it as that circumference. You might see it might be helpful this week to think of circumference as pi. And then what is the diameter? Well, we know the diameter is just 2 times the radius, right? So you could do, instead of saying diameter, you could do 2 r's. So you could say 2 pi r. And that means the same thing. So we know that pi times the diameter is actually the same thing as 2 of the radius times pi, so 2 pi r. That's just a side note. Let's keep going. So what is a cylinder, and what do we mean when we talk about a cylinder? So I want you to consider this, that if we've got a circle, and imagine that this circle is just kind of laying flat. That's why it looks kind of that way right now. And we take that circle and we stretch it out so that we've got a circle on the top and a circle on the bottom, and they are connected by a side length or a lateral area. Okay, so think of that, and just kind of consider how a circle relates to a cylinder. It might be helpful for us to draw what's called a net, and a net is a two-dimensional shape or a 2D drawing that can be modified to form a 3-dimensional solid. So we can think of that as like a pattern, or maybe a template, depending on what you feel comfortable about with it. But if we look at it this way, let's say that we have, let's do this, it says cap point, but that's just the center of the circle. Oops. So let's say we've got this top circle right here. Let's color that red. And then we've got this bottom circle, which we would also kind of make red. But then wrapped around it is this yellow part. So if I laid it flat, if I cut it open right through the middle and I laid it flat, well, the sides would all unroll into this part right here. And the top and the bottom, those would still be circles. But if we unrolled it, we would have 2 circles, a top base and a bottom base, and that flat part that's the rectangle that makes up the sides. So we know how to find the area of a circle. How did we say we did that? Well, we know that area is circumference is pi times diameter. Area is pi r squared. And we know that the area of a rectangle, back from elementary school, was just kind of length times width, or one side times the other side. So if we're going to consider how to find the net of a cylinder, how to find what the cylinder is, so the top part and the bottom part and the whole middle, how can we use those two skills to find the surface area of a cylinder. So I want you to take just a minute and consider that. And hopefully you kind of thought about it. And I think what I'm going to do here too is I'm going to go ahead and let's make this a different color. So we said the area is length times width. So we're thinking we've got this. Say we figure out that area, and then we figure out the area of one circle and then the area of the other circle. Well, we know, what can we do with those? Well, we know that we're going to have the area of two bases. And we're going to have the area of the, let's say the sides or the lateral. That just means sides, the lateral area. And what do we need to do with that? Well, what do we have to do with that to find it is we've got to add those together, right? And that's how we will find that total surface area. That total surface area. We're going to move on through this quick. Let's look at an example. Let's find the area of the circles. So let's say that this circle, let's look at the top. This circle, let's give it a radius of 2. So let's say radius is 2. Okay, well, we know that that means that the bottom circle is also going to have a radius of 2, right? Let's go ahead and just label that. And now this edge right here and this edge right here, if we rolled them up to show where they lined up on the bottom of the circle, well, that would actually be whatever the circumference is, right? Because that's going to, like, if we imagine we just took this circle and we rolled it around here, right? We rolled the circle around there. That would just trace the edge of one of these circles. Okay? And let's imagine that the height from one circle to the other, let's just give that a measurement of, let's just say 4 for the sake of doing this. Okay, let's find the area of the circles. Well, it says area is pi r squared. So we're going to say that area, let's write this down, area is pi times 2 squared, which is the same thing as 4 times pi. And let's just leave it like that right now, because we're going to have to end up rounding in the end, right? Because pi is not a nice, neat, clean number. It's a rational. So let's just leave it as 4 pi for right now. And remember, there's a circle on top and a circle on bottom. So we know that we're actually going to have 2 times 4 pi, okay? 2 times 4 pi. So really, that's 8 times pi. Okay, so far, that's where we are. And now let's consider the area of that rectangle. Well, we know that the area of the rectangle is length times width. And let's say that the length, we said it was 4. And we have to figure out what's the width. Well, let's take a side note. So we know that the width, we said, is the same thing as the circumference because it's rolled up. And we know circumference is pi times diameter. But without having to figure out what's diameter, let's just think of it as 2 of the radiuses because we've got radii, because we know that that's 2. So let's fill that in as, we're going to take that times 2 times pi, and the radius is 2. 2 times pi times 2. So let's see. Our area is, well, we know because of commutative property that we can move those around, and we know that 2 times 2 is 4. So let's do it this way. 4 times 2 times 2, that's 8. 8 times 2 is 16. So we've got 16 times pi. So if we want to find that total surface area, we know we've got to add these two things together, right? So to find the surface area, we took 2 of the bases, right? That's what we've got right here. This is one base. So I got 2 of those. So I've got 8 pi, and I need to add that to the area of my rectangle, which is 16 pi. So if I've got 8 of them for the circles, 8 times pi for the circles, and I've got 16 times pi for the lateral or the rectangular area, if I add those together, I'd have 24 pi. And now I can put that into a calculator and find an approximation. You know what, here, I'll do that really quick. Let's see, let me pull up a calculator on this device right next to me. So if I put in the calculator, I could put 24 times pi if I have a pi button. If I don't have a pi button, I can use 3.14, and I'm just going to round it. 75.4 is an approximate answer. And remember, depending, if I ask you, what is it in terms of pi, that means you can give me this exact answer right here. If I say estimate it or round it to the nearest something or the other, that's the type of answer you would give me right there. So let's find the total surface area of this cylinder. Now, for the sake of this, I'm going to say I know that my total surface area is going to be 2 of my bases plus my lateral area. Well, let's see, 2, the area of my base is a circle, and the area is found by pi r squared. And I know my lateral area is going to be that rectangle that it makes, so that if I've got my rectangle, the top would be the circumference. So my circumference I know is 2 pi r, and then I've got my height as well times the height. So there, that's all just with r's and h's, and oops, hit a thing. R's and h's. So let's say, let's call r, let's make that red here. So that the r, so we know that wherever, let's make it, that's r is my red one. And let's make my height blue right there. My height is blue. Now let's just substitute. Let's just plug some things in and see what we get. Well, I've got 2 times pi, and then instead of r, I'm going to write what my r is. Well, that's 6, but I know I have to square it, squared. And I'm going to add to that 2 times pi, and then again, my r is 6, and my height is 5. Okay, so now we just need to do some simple calculations. Let's see, 2 times pi, and then 6 squared is the same as 6 times 6, that's 36. 2 pi, well, what is 6 times 5? That's 30. All right, now I can take that 2 and multiply it times the 36, so that would give me 72. I still have pi. And over here I've got 30 and 2. Let's turn that into 60 pi. All right, well, I have 60 times pi, and then I have 72 times pi. So altogether I have 132 times pi. I think that's right. You can call me out if I'm wrong at home. Okay, so 132 times pi. That is an exact answer in terms of pi. If I want to estimate that, I can pop it into a calculator. 132 times pi will estimate out to about 414.7. And in this case, it is kilometers squared. So let's just kind of go through how we got that formula one more time. So to find the surface area of a cylinder, I know that I have the area of the circle. That's my base area, and I know I've got 2 of them, right? I've got 2 of them, one on the top and one on the bottom. And then I also know that I have the area of that rectangle, or we might call it the lateral area. And if I let's see, let's keep tracking with these colors here. So I've got 2 times, and the formula for finding the area of a circle is pi r squared. And then if I think about the lateral area, well, that's just a rectangle. It's length times width. And we know that that width is going to be equal to the circumference, right? That's where we're pulling in, the circumference. Let's see. So that's why we've got 2 pi r here, because that's the circumference. Because the circumference is, you could call it 2 times diameter, or you could call it 2 pi r. Those mean the same thing because the diameter is twice the radius. And we also know we've got that height there, the length and the height, we could call that the same thing. So that's why you might see it written like this. You might see it written like this. I want you to make sure that you make those connections. Those are equivalent statements. So if I simplify it all, I can do 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h, or radius times height, and that'll do the trick. That'll help me find my area every single time. So if you are confused, come see me. I'd be happy to work with ways to connect those, because I feel like we got a little bit abstract with like, well, there's a W and there's an R and there's an L and there's an H. So if you're having a hard time putting together why those are equivalent statements, shoot me a message or let me know, and I will make sure to spend some more time on that with you. Also, I'm going to be putting in the module extra videos that help you understand that concept.